All right, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to each of you. So we're going to be talking about, enabling functions for SMEs, right? And I think people would have gathered through the introductions that all of you have some kind of technical background from an accounting or project background, but also partner creatively with whatever your passion is in the spaces that you show up in. So I want to start with critical functions SMEs should have in place, right? And what are those key things from your perspective and in the context of the business that you run and the industry that you operate in? So I'll start on this side.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thanks for that great introduction. So one of the critical functions that SMEs need to have is definitely financial literacy, because the lack of financial literacy can literally make or break your business. And there are a lot of beautiful tools out there that enable businesses and business owners to be more in touch with their accounting functions and the business functions within the organizations. So for example, our organization, 01 to 3, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs and startups, just holding their hands throughout the whole process of understanding their books, understanding how finances impact their operations, and basically just keeping their dreams alive with regards to the numbers.
I like that, keeping your dreams alive, especially with the numbers, right? Because if the numbers aren't adding up, the dream could have to adjust. I won't say fail, but it has to adjust. Melody, from your perspective.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome, and I'm very excited to be here. From my perspective, I would say one of the critical functions is just having a strategy on how you're going to human resource your business, right? And especially as a small business, it's very easy to be the co-founders, and then 5 years later, it's still just the two of you trying to do everything for yourselves, and you find that the business is not growing and you are not able to scale because you don't have the right people to be able to do the work. So I would say that's one of the critical functions, just having a strategy from as early as possible on how am I going to human resource this business so I can scale.
I like that. And Cheva?
Yes, thank you. Echoing the sentiments of my co-panelists, thank you for the warm welcome and very excited to be here. So I think something that's relevant to your industry, first of all, have a landscape or a bird's eye view of what are industry requirements. What are, in inverted commas, the licenses to do business within your industry. Understand what those requirements are and in some way attempt to satisfy those requirements, because they very soon prove to be barriers to entry if you don't have, call it the ticket to the game, as it were. So understand what industry requirements are specific to your value proposition, satisfy those, and at least you got a ticket to win.
I like that, your ticket to win, and I hope it's a short ticket to win. And I think it's really important that when you start out, there's a good understanding of the landscape, of what the expectations are, and that you at least think about how you're going to feel your way through the dark. Melody, I want to come back to you around the capacitating that HR function, right? Because it is a one-man team for a while, and that does limit what you are able to do and how much you are able to do. At what point should a person think about expanding their team, right? And I think in that as well are the different options to expand, because I think somebody's going, oh, I don't have money to hire anybody. So how do we rethink around how we manage that as SMEs, especially when we're in those early stages of our business?
I would say you want to do it as early as possible, right? I mean, in the business that I run, I think it must have been in our 3rd month that we started looking at people, and we did not have money to pay them, and we were not even paying ourselves at the time. And we worked on how do we find a way to get this to work. And one of the ways that we were able to do that was using Yes for Youth. Right, so there's the Yes for Youth program, and it's government funded. It's an agency, but that's also government funded. And what they do is you get big corporates that will sponsor a basic salary for interns. So, for example, you'll take like a Vodacom, and they'll say, we are sponsoring salaries for 4,000 interns, but they can't take on 4,000 interns into the company.
Yeah.
Right? So those 4,000 interns have got salaries, and they need placements in other companies. So that's how we're able to get interns into our company for a year without necessarily having to worry about how we're going to pay them. And it was a mutually beneficial relationship for us because we needed people, they needed experience, right? What we do in our company is quite unique because it's e-learning. It's still very new, right, in the world, still very new in South Africa. So we were getting young people that did not even know what e-learning is, right? They apply by faith, just thinking, I just want a job, and this thing looks interesting, and they will apply, and we had to really just take on people based on are you going to be able to learn? Are you eager to learn? And we had to train from scratch.
Yeah.
And at the end of that year, when we offboard those interns, because that's how the Years for Youth program works, you offboard the interns, every single person that leaves our company gets a job somewhere else.
That's fantastic.
And so when we've done it twice now, right? We've just offboarded our second cohort. And it's been amazing. So that's one of the ways that we have been able to resource our business, and this is an option that's open to SMEs. Yeah.
I like that a lot, especially that aspect of finding beneficial relationships, because everything doesn't have to fall on your shoulders. The burden doesn't have to be on you. Equally, coming this side from an accounting perspective, right? I think people often think, oh, I'm not making that much revenue, we're not making profit yet, the business is not growing as maybe how we thought it would be. How do people manage that, especially when people go like, oh, because I'm not transaction, I don't really need an accounting system or an accounting solution. What are the important things that people need to be thinking about as early as possible, and then get those correct systems in place so that you're not sitting however long down the line and then you're trying to reconfigure everything?
Yeah, I love that question. There are a lot of brilliant and very affordable accounting packages out there that are cloud-based, for example, Xero, that keep you in touch with your daily operations, keep the business owner in touch with the daily operations. So some of the most important thing as a business owner that you need to look out for is you need to have, your pulse on your debtors, for example. You need to have your pulse on your bank, on collections and things like that. So if you look at packages like Xero, they're very affordable, and I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is people think having an accountant is expensive, or it's, one of those things that you can do without at the beginning. And I beg to differ on that. You need to have an accountant in place right from the beginning, because there's so many compliance issues that a lot of entrepreneurs come across that can literally break the business, and enable you to not move forward and enable you to not function. So I would say right from the get-go, you need to have a great accountant. You need to do your market research with regards accountants like us, for example, that work with a lot of entrepreneurs. We're not afraid to start with you from zero. And we charge you based on what you can afford, with the hope that you'll grow. And obviously when you grow and the volumes come in, we also get to make more money. And not only that, it's also very gratifying, very satisfying to see a business start from zero and become something else in just a couple of years. We've got a number of those beautiful businesses that have started with us and are flying high right now. And that is, one of the greatest pleasures. So I would say, do your research, see what's out there on the market, get in touch with an accountant. There are different packages for different businesses. Don't feel like everything is lumped into, one big expensive package.
Yeah.
There are people out there that are willing to work with you and tailor a package that works for you and that you're able to afford as you grow within your business.
I like that, Kinsanya. And I also just want to pause on the compliance aspect. So can we unpack that a little bit? Because I think oftentimes when people think about accounting, they're thinking about balancing their books. And they miss all the other elements of compliance that you can get support and assistance with. So can you unpack those a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. For example, with VAT, just being able to submit your VAT returns on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis, and the implications of not meeting a VAT submission deadline, for example, can be quite detrimental for businesses, especially if you're dealing with very big numbers. The penalties and interest on that can be quite harsh. So, and that is something that you have to do, whether you like it or not, whether you have a budget for it or not. It's something that is regulated and has to be done. And working with accounting packages, for example, like Xero, the VAT function is integrated into the accounting package, and it gives you an idea, more or less, as you trade throughout the month, how much is it that I'm going to pay, or how much will I possibly get as a refund, So, and that's an accounting package, for example, that you can look at. Other compliance issues, just keeping your company alive. A lot of entrepreneurs register the company with CIPC, they forget to pay their annual returns on an annual basis, and then you find your business is in the process of being deregistered. So being in touch with a great accountant or financial advisor like ourselves and so many other businesses out there helps to keep your hand on things like that, because then they can advise you, give you warnings. This is about to expire. What would you like us to do? Should we renew this? And it's very important, because as an entrepreneur, you've got so many things that you're handling. Like you were saying, you are everything. You're a one-man show, especially right at the beginning, and you might not be able to have a handle on some of these finance issues. So it's very important to have a financial advisor on board who can advise you to say, your CIP IPC annual returns is due, your VAT is due, your income tax returns are due, provisional taxes have to be paid and declared every 6 months. You know, things like that that are not necessarily a luxury for you. It's something that has to be done. And from a compliance perspective, your inability to meet those deadlines can be quite detrimental financially. So, yeah.
Yeah, so all very good reasons to be compliant from the beginning.
Yeah.
But also find that, especially for entrepreneurs, when you are looking for grant funding or any other kind of support, that even if you're not profitable and somebody's willing to fund you, that they want those compliance documents and
Yes.
information. You know, so
Yes.
instead of scrambling at the last minute to make sure that all your stuff is in order, have that ready up front, and getting an accountant from the beginning can assist you with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Trev, I want to come over to you, and I think, you know, from a strategy perspective, but also from an innovation perspective, and kind of just seeing how do people think differently around how they do strategy, how do people think differently around how they manage their projects, or how they, you know, make sure that something can go from idea to implementation, and that entire cycle. You know, with the companies that you work with and the space that you guys work in, what do you find that some of the challenges that entrepreneurs face with that full turn cycle?
Yes, good question. And thanks for that. So one of the things that we've seen is, you know, entrepreneurs start out all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, phenomenal plans to take over the world, a beautifully written strategy, and then life happens.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, you know, that I think resilient companies and entrepreneurs of today need to have is an ability to adapt. Real-time adaptation, not adapting, you know, after the waves come and gone. So it's being in tune with what's happening in terms of market developments, like events like COVID, the Black Swan event. How do you pivot your business, which was positioned to follow a certain path? How do you react to those market opportunities that now present themselves that weren't there previously? So one of the key things I think would be adaptability at great pace. I often tell peers of ours, you know, your strategy is almost as good as your next job. That's where you're going, which is good in some regards and not in others, because you want to stay the course to the extent that you can, and stay true to the reason for being. So it's a fine balance between, I call it, sticking the path and responding to what market and what life throws you.
Yeah.
And to the second part of your question, what are some of the things that you can do to accelerate or to perhaps deliver and or progress an opportunity? Something that we've seen, and I think the world's been alive to it, but just now much more on an accelerated basis, is the digitalization of everything. Data is important. How do you assess? How do you respond to that data, I think, is equally important. What we've seen as an opportunity and something that's phenomenally helpful to entrepreneurs is bringing, like in the accounting space, but from a project perspective, Pangaea has identified the opportunity to bring digital processes that eliminate, call it, human interface to the extent that you can, streamlining and integrating processes. So the integration and digitalization of manual processes unlocks phenomenal value. So to the extent that you can get platforms, it's recommended to do so.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, especially when you are that one-man team, that if you can offset certain functions that aren't necessary for you to do all the time, or that are routine and monotonous, that if you can find a way to automate those, that it becomes a lot easier to manage your business, and to manage your business especially as you grow. Another thing that I want to ask you, Trevor, is for somebody who's struggling to differentiate or distinguish the difference between what their business plan is and what their strategy is, right? What are those key, so yes, you have all your information in your business plan, but what are some of the key things that you should have in a strategy?
Look, I think strategy has a longer term prospect or a nuance to it than a plan does in some regards. More sector identification, big, bolder definition of where do you wish to be, reason for being an element contained in your strategy. A plan is effectively the how-to. How are we going to attain what our strategy says we should be? What are those granular steps that we should be taking, or those granular things that we should be doing now, or in a foreseeable, predefined time that enables us to achieve where we strategically wish to be? So there's a dimension of time to it, but also a dimension of definition that differentiates plan to strategy.
I like that, and I think that that's important because you want to be able to stick out the long term, right? And you want to make sure that the thing that you're hoping out to do, and what you said earlier, starting bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, is going, how do you still keep that momentum when the realities of running a business hit you, right?
Absolutely.
And if you have a strategy in place, it becomes a lot easier to kind of go, this was what we were meant to do, this is when we're going to do it. And so even if you're not feeling particularly excited on that day, it can still be business as usual because there's a strategy in place on how to execute, what needs to be executed, and to the point that you do get a team or that you do have a process or a system in place, you know what items need to be delegated. And I find that that helps a lot with the decision-making process. So for those of you who are engaging on the app, if you have any specific questions that you want to ask, you'll see on the bottom right-hand side, there's a tab that says Ask. So you can click that and that will pop through your questions. I see a few comments and we'll get to those at the end. But if you have any specific questions, just click the Ask tab and then we'll address those just before the panel discussion wraps up. I want to come to you, Ketsani and Melody, as people who are business owners but have gone through that process of startup to a growing business. What has your experience been in how quickly things can actually grow and how quickly you can kind of almost feel like you're losing control because one day you were sort of just, I'm hoping this becomes something, and then, one big contract happens and you realize, actually, I don't have the capacity to grow in the way that I wanted to because I've been wanting this contract worth $1 million, 20 million, whatever it is, but I actually don't have the resources or the capacity to manage that. Can you speak a little bit to, what your experience has been and some of the things that you've been able to put in place that have supported you and allowed you to not fall off the track in that growth journey? I think we can start with Ketsani.
With me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think one of the things which is very critical, being an accountant, naturally, I'm very strategic and very prepared. So I think one of the things for entrepreneurs that I would advise is when you start up a business, you obviously have a dream, a vision. There's something that you want to accomplish. Above everything, you want to make money. That's the whole point of starting a business. You want to make money at the end of the day. You want to be able to service your clients. You want to do whatever you do in a really meaningful and impactful way. So having a plan in place that is able to absorb any opportunity that comes your way seamlessly, I think is very critical, And one of the things that threw me off a little bit right at the beginning was just how quickly, like you said, how quickly things can happen. Therefore, if you don't have a blueprint in place, it's very difficult to catch those opportunities and to utilize the opportunities that come your way because you simply don't have the infrastructure, whether it's mentally, physically, software-wise as well, to absorb those opportunities to come in place so that it sort of becomes a plug and play. So that planning and that strategy that you spoke about, Trevor, is very important because you need to obviously prepare for something even before it comes your way so that everything just fills in seamlessly and then you obviously adjust as you go. Without that blueprint, it becomes very difficult. So I think that was one of my earlier experiences and my biggest advice to a lot of entrepreneurs out there is just preparation. Have the necessary infrastructure in place, whether it's human resource, whether it's a strategic side of things, software side of things, have all that in place so that when opportunities come your way, it's a simple plug and play.
I like that, having a blueprint in place. Melody?
Yeah.
Two things, right? The first thing I would say, just echo what Ketsani was saying, it's just having all of your things in place. So in our case, we started off and made sure that we're quite compliant, like all the basic things that we needed. So you're not going to catch us without a BE certificate. You're not going to catch us not having, our tax registration, right? Because we want to be prepared. So the first thing was just making sure that everything that we need to be compliant as best as we can, right from the beginning, before we even had our first client. And the second one is what Trevor was talking about when he spoke about innovation and being able to move quickly. Yeah. I think one of the things that has helped us to be able to not only just survive the pandemic, but to be able to thrive has been being able to innovate and think on our feet. The idea that we went to bed with last night, if it does not work at 8 o'clock in the morning, the following day, we ditch it. And no one is going to worry about holding on to it.
Yeah.
And we move on to what is the next best thing that we can go to. And that's just where business is going because that's, the change is happening so quickly. Mm-hmm. And if you're stuck in your ways and you're stuck to this is how things are supposed to be, this is how, I thought this thing was going to work out and you're unable to move quickly and innovate quickly, then you're going to struggle. I think one of the key survival strategies for the present time and for the future is change.
Yeah.
if you can change as quickly as possible and to be able to innovate on your feet, then you're going to be just fine. But if you're struggling to do that, then you're in big trouble.
Indeed, we are in big trouble, and we know that change is the one thing that's consistent, right?
Yes.
Things will always change. We don't know when, we don't know how, but the ability to kind of be on your toes and to be agile as things change.
Yes.
One thing I want to highlight from what you said was, if the idea doesn't work in the morning, just be okay with chucking it, right? Is there a golden rule for how much time you give something? You know, and I'm thinking about, I've spoken to entrepreneurs who I tried to do this several years ago, and then it didn't work, so I stopped, but now I'm trying it again. Or people who go, I've been running this for a year, and it's just not working, there's no traction. How much time should one, and I mean, Trevor and Kinsani, you're welcome to jump in on this as well.
Yeah.
How much time should a person comfortably give themselves to actually test if an idea is worth it, and if it's worth kind of continuously pursuing, or if it's actually time to adjust your strategy or the idea completely?
I mean, I can't say I would know, a specific time, because I've never really worked with going, this is how much time, we should do this. It just depends on the industry, the project, the idea, that feedback that you are, receiving, right, regarding, that specific thing. So I think your intuition as well plays a big role.
Yes.
Your research, your market research also plays, a big role in terms of how much time should you give it, and the feedback that you are receiving based on, are there any prospects, like 0 prospects to however many prospects, right, for this thing? Because if you've got 0 prospects and so much time has gone by and you can see that this is not going anywhere, I would say your intuition as well,
Yeah.
plays a big role in that, in just how much time you should give.
Yeah, I like that. And looking at prospects as a measure of there being a business, because sometimes we're very passionate about it. Like, it's my baby, it's going to be so great, but only you and 3 other people think it's going to be
Exactly,
so great. Right? But because you're so passionate, it's difficult to see the wood from the trees. But it's important to give yourself that time to test. And I think you're quite correct to say it depends on the industry that you're in. I mean, obviously, if the startup capital for your business, if you're in agriculture or construction, if that takes longer, then it might
Yes.
be longer. But if you're baking stuff and selling tomorrow morning, the turnaround time for feedback on that is a lot quicker. Trevor, Kensani, I don't know if either of you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think from my side, just what Melody said is spot on. It's literally the world we live in right now is innovate or die. You have to be very agile as a business owner, enough to recognize that if something is not working, you need to change it, because our world is changing very quickly and everything happens so fast. And if you don't have your hand on the pulse, things can really get out of control, and you could actually end up losing out. So I think agility is very important. Innovation is very critical, because industries are literally dying overnight. For example, if you look at the taxi business, now everybody's using Uber. Ever wonder what has happened to the old system where you could just walk to a rank and get on a cab, and go somewhere? That's hardly ever happening now. So innovation is very important, studying your environment and figuring out when it's time to change or make that particular change. So Melody was spot on that.
Yeah, spot on. I think the essence of it is nothing sacred.
Yeah.
Right? Don't hold on to the idea because it's romantic, because it's yours, because it's your baby, as you call it. The other thing is, I think, to your question of how long is it, our experience has been that there's never a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Right? It's a function of the opportunity, it's a function of the market, it's a function of your industry. There are some opportunities that you just got to, bat your full innings and see it through to full completion before you make a call on it. And the other things, like you say, specific to the business, if you see I'm baking and tomorrow this is not selling, I got to flick my product range tomorrow. So it's really, it's horses for courses, no one size fits all, and nothing is sacred.
I like those. Those are very, very good, very key points to take away with you. So what I want to get people to start thinking about is, the theme for today is upgrading and optimizing. And so somebody who's like, okay, yes, I hear where each of you are coming from. I think I've thought through that. I think my strategy is solid. I think my market is solid. I want to go to the next level, right? How do people upgrade from where they are to the next level? And specifically, I think about people who are feeling stuck. So maybe you're doing the same thing. Maybe you're doing a lot of things, so you're not sure what is the stuck factor, so you don't really know how to get unstuck. Are there tips for how one can kind of make that next step that allows them to level up? And even if it's something as, the aspects of your business that you should be auditing or thinking about that can help you figure out where your bottlenecks are, or things that you should drop because they are taking up too much time, too much weight, they're costing you too much, and that's holding you back. Do you guys have any experience with that, or any tips that people can kind of reflect on in their own business to go, okay, this is where my next change needs to be so that I can take that big shift? We'll start that side with you, Trevor.
100%, absolutely. Coming from the legal profession, one is always plagued with the notion of conservatism. So we tend to be very conservative, not making bold leaps, and sometimes that's been a bit of a problem. In other times, it's fared well for us. So I think you need to be calculating. In the environment that you're in, I think organic growth and the sequential steps to growth have fared well for us, and that's effectively what the strategy that we followed. A function of our output and a function of our growth has been directly related to people, human resources, like you've touched on at the start of the discussion. So we've systematically thought about how do we bring people on board, how do we capacitate, balancing, yes, you could do some capacitation improvements through, call it interventions, and like the YES program, which is phenomenal. But in our industry, you need top-end performers, people with phenomenal records, track record, people with great experience. And those individuals, unfortunately, come with hefty price tags to them. So how do you navigate that? So it's been very organic, but in a sustained way, calculated, I think sometimes held back by being conservative, but it sustained us.
Okay, I like that. And there is a sequence to business, and I think if somebody watches their market, watches the industry that they're playing in, and kind of looks at the trends within their business over however long they've been operating, that sequence presents itself, and you can kind of deduce what is the next logical step. Melody?
I would say you have to challenge your creativity. You must shake the water. And one of the ways, in which we like to shake the water in our companies, we like learning. Right? We like learning. You can tell that I'm quite an academic, but it's not only just formal learning, but it's even doing things like small courses, like short courses online. Like we're very big on going, what's on Coursera? What are they offering?
Yeah.
Is it in line with what I'm doing? Maybe not, but it looks interesting. Right? So I'm going to take it on, and I'm just going to see, where I go with this. Just doing the course. And you'll find that in the midst of that, you get different perspective, you get, new ideas, and you might even end up coming up with a new product line or a new service, right, in your business. And those are the things that helps you to start, to grow. It's just being able to look outside of the box from what you are used to be able to think outside of the box from what you are used to, and to implement that as well, with your staff. Right, so like I said, we're very big on learning, and we're very big on training, and we're also very big on not spending too much money on it.
Yeah.
Right, so
all the things
we're a small business. We don't have money, to pay for you to go to university.
Yeah.
But we have the time to sit and go through what does Coursera have, what does Udemy have, what does EDX have, what does YouTube have. I cannot tell you how many things that I have taught myself.
Yes.
Right, and things that I'm using in my business and servicing clients that I've learned, through YouTube. My background is not digital, right? And the company that I run is digital. I've never gone to study for a formal course in digital. Every single thing that I do in e-learning, I learned through Coursera and YouTube. Right? And I've been able to run a business.
Yes.
And we tell this story to all of our interns and all our employees that come in to say, if you're willing to learn, you'll be able to learn, right? And we are constantly challenging them to learn. And we also know that not all the best ideas are going to come from us as founders.
Yes.
Right? So we know that. I've been a creative all my life, and I worked, as a TV producer, and to a certain extent still does, for over a decade. So for me, working creatively is something that I'm used to, and I know that ideas are very cheap. Right? And it's like, ideas are cheap. We hold on to ideas like it's my idea. No, ideas are cheap. An idea is not a business. It's actually very cheap. Anybody can come up with a great idea. So we don't hold on to that. And we also know that the best ideas as well don't only come from you.
Yeah.
They come from your staff. And that's why you need to give them the same tools to be able to just shake up the water and spark that creativity, out of them. Throw them off. If you're in accounting, let them do a course there on art or something.
Yeah.
That is just like completely out of what the company does, and just see what that does to their mind when they are done with it.
Yeah,
and the growth that you start to have in your business.
Yeah.
No, that's true. I think it's important to make room for play and to explore and to find new skills. And don't underestimate the value of free YouTube University. There's so much that you can learn online. And just to your point, I had a conversation over the weekend with a founder of an organization, but they quite bigger. And they were saying that this week is dedicated to play. And they have a bunch of software engineers, a bunch of tech developers. And they were like, this week you guys can develop absolutely anything you want. It doesn't have to be for the business. It doesn't have to be something that we're currently working on. Just do whatever you want, but just play. And that they found that in the times when they have a week of play, people always come back so much better. But also their brains just get sparked differently. And it does help to step away from what you're doing, focus on something else that could be beneficial, and then come back and see how much more your mind has been opened up. So I think that's such a great point. Kensani, on your side.
I think knowledge is wealth. The more you know about your business, not just from what you specialize in, but every single aspect of your business, even things that you're not comfortable with or things that you're not really knowledgeable on, the more you know about it, the easier it is for you to equip yourself with the necessary skill set to make a change when something is not happening. There's no way you would just sit still if you knew money is not coming in. This customer actually doesn't pay, but I'm still trading with them and giving them my products, and I'm not recovering that money. So I think the more you know, the more knowledgeable you are, not just about your specialty, but about every single aspect of your business and even the environment that you're in, the easier it is for you to make that change, because you're constantly innovating, like what Melody said. You're constantly innovating, you're constantly on the pulse with regards what else is out there that could influence your business, and it makes it so much easier to make the change if something is not adding up.
So I'd like to challenge you guys a little bit around that definition of innovation, right? Because I think oftentimes when people talk about innovation, they feel like it has to be so new and so novel and never seen before. What are some of your design hacks around innovation, and also just what you define innovation as, or how do you see innovation, especially in a startup? I'll start with you because you were the most recent.
Okay, so you're right. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bright new idea that is revolutionary. Nobody has ever done it before. It's something innovative in the accounting space could be something as simple as I've got an app on my phone where I can actually send an invoice to a client without necessarily sitting on a laptop. I'm using an accounting software that just requires me to have internet, and I can work from anywhere in the world. I don't need the software to be downloaded on a laptop and then connected to a server somewhere, that kind of thing. Just simple things like that are innovative from an accounting perspective, and for even business owners as well. I can easily chase up on my money just by looking at my Xero app, for example. I can transact, I can speak to my bank if I see something untoward happening on my bank account. Something simple as that is innovative from an accounting space.
Cool. Melody?
I would say the way that I would define innovation is finding new ways to solve problems, whether it's a new problem or whether it's existing, problems. So it's just creatively coming up with new ways to say, here's a problem that we are facing, and what can we do differently in order for us to be able to then solve this problem, contribute to the business, contribute to society, anything that helps us, to shift forward, and finding different ways to solve those problems.
I think that's great. Trevor?
Yeah, talking about an innovation hack, I think we flooded with, call it, technological developments, apps. Every other hour, there's a new app that's coming out, an integration that allows you to do something that you couldn't do prior to that. What we found was, taking, call it, an existing problem or an existing complexity and applying one of these new solutions to it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel from scratch. It's about applying new tech, applying new developments to existing problems. And the outcomes have been phenomenal. Something like document management, something simple like ensuring that you've got reminders for things that are statutory related, where you don't run out with a CIPC registration because now you're being deregistered because you didn't do something as mundane as that. So simple things, but it's the application of new solutions and new tech to old problems.
I like that. And there is such a good match and a balance between the new and the old. And there's ways that you can mix and match. And there's ways that you can approach things that's unique to your context that is innovative as well. And I see a lot of that when I look at rural startups in different parts of Africa and how they've gone about using tech that we might not think about leveraging for business, and it works really well in their context. So that's also a space for innovation. And before we wrap up our panel discussion, I'd like to just give each of you just an opportunity to share that if somebody wants to work with you, if someone's wanting to take advantage of your accounting solutions or whatever it may be, how do people get a hold of you, and what can they expect from that process? And then just wrapping up on enabling functions. What's the one thing, from everything that everyone has learned today, and they're kind of going, oh my goodness, I've got so much to do. What's the one thing that it's a really good enabling function that every entrepreneur should take on immediately. Like if you haven't done this, make sure this is done, come tomorrow morning. Kinsani?
Okay, so on our side, I think I'll start with the last question that you had. The very first thing you need to have as an entrepreneur, get an accounting system that you can download on your phone and get in touch with an accountant, like myself, for example, who is very passionate about entrepreneurs and is passionate about growing with you. And you're not just one of the numbers, you know, you're not just one of his clients in a big frame of things. You need to have someone who understands your business and that it can advise you beyond the numbers, not just somebody who puts in the numbers and sends you a report. Someone who will empower you from a financial literacy perspective, where they can explain to you what the connection is behind your dream, your operations, and how that translates into the numbers at the end of the day. So I think that would be very critical. So if you want to reach out to me, our website is www.0123.co.za, and my cell phone number is 0735257438. You can also drop me an email at nkapena@0123.co.za.
Awesome, and that's the word 0 and then the numbers 1, 2, 3.
Yes, the word 0 with the Z.
Yes,
Yes.
just to be clear on that.
Yeah.
Melody,
The one thing. I think that the one thing is, if you're still using paper, you need to get off paper as soon as possible. You need to start digitizing. If you have not started, digitizing in your business, then you're wasting a lot of time and you're falling behind. You need to get digital as soon as possible, and that's really in all of your business functions, and I'm talking accounting. If you are still just working with an Excel spreadsheet, you need to call her, right? You need to move on from that. If your HR processes are still sitting in a file, you need to go get a system, that can help you with that, and there's lots of free systems that you can get. If you still don't have project management functions because you're thinking, I can't afford a project manager, there's a digital solution for that. There's a cloud solution for that. That is for free. There's lots, right, that you can find. So I would say that small businesses need to start enhancing their performance by saving time, and you need to digitize as in yesterday.
cool.
Yeah.
Digitize, guys,
Yes.
immediately.
And then if you need to get hold of me through my website, www.myfuturework.co.za, you can email me at connect@myfuturework.co.za or melodyx@myfuturework.co.za.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melody. Trevor?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Just endorsing what my co-panelists have said. The bit that sticks with me is back to my first point. In the professional services space, project or construction-related space, the prerequisites, understanding the prerequisites to operate. Without that, whether it be a certification, whether it be an accreditation, you simply can be as good as you wish to be, but if you don't have the license to do business in the sector, you're dead in the water. So I'd say understand what are the prerequisites to do business per sector, per opportunity, and if you need assistance with that, we're happy to help. Pangea Professional Services, you can reach us on www.pangea.co.za. I'm happy to share my email, which is very simple. It's trevor@pangea.co.za, and my mobile number is 082-882-1976.
And can you please spell Pangea for the people? So
Certainly, Pangea, Pangea. Thank you very
awesome.
much.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the work that you guys do to support SMEs, but also being entrepreneurs yourself and growing and being trailblazers. It's lovely to kind of be in a space where you're like, oh, look at them winning. That means I can do it as well. So thank you so much for being here and shining that light and being a testimony to that and sharing your insights and knowledge with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. You can exit stage right. Cool, that was such a fantastic panel discussion looking at enabling functions. And it's the basics of running a business. That if you're starting a business, if you're running a business, if you're trying to grow a business, really think about things that you can automate. Think about how do you get off paper. Think about how you streamline. And there's key functions that you can find free cloud software and solutions to support you in that. I'm going to ask you to take a moment before we jump into our next panel. If you've been sitting this entire time, I'm going to ask you, I can't see you, so I'm going to trust that you are doing this with me. But I'm going to ask you to stand, and we will for 2 seconds just power pose together while I tell you what a power pose is, right? So power pose was designed, well, not designed, but researched by Professor Amy Cuddy at Harvard University, and she found that if you stand like this for 2 minutes, it raises your body's levels of testosterone, which is your confidence hormone, and ladies, you have it as well, and it drops your body's level of cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So if you're feeling particularly stressed out, if you need to rewrite an email that didn't sound too nice or anything like that. Power pose for 2 minutes. And this is a power pose. This is also a power pose, right? So any power pose, walk around like this in the office for 2 minutes. And maybe you make this a team thing where you're like, guys, we need fresh ideas. Let's all power pose together. And you can woosa out of that. And you can have a seat back at your laptop, computer, or your phone, wherever it is that you're watching us from. And we're going to jump into our next panel discussion. Really, this section is dedicated to how do you as a business upgrade and optimize. And our previous panel was around enabling functions. And our next panel is going to be on enabling technologies, right? And I think this is going to be very exciting. Don't freak out. These are great people. They're not going to, make you feel like you're not up to speed. But I'd like to welcome my panel, and they can join me as I call out their names. So firstly on the panel is Lerato Moselane from DVT. Lerato is the practice head of mobile services at DVT. He is passionate about digital transformation, entrepreneurship, and strategy. Through DVT, he provides end-to-end business software solutions with a focus on mobility strategy, consulting, and implementation. So welcome, Lerato. Joining him is our next guest is Hilton. Hilton Thesian. I hope Hilton can tell me if I said his surname correctly. Hilton is from Growth Wheel South Africa. He's the Managing Director of Growth Wheel South Africa and VP of Global Partnerships. Hilton's mission is to deliver practical tools and solutions to the education, development, ICT, and entrepreneur ecosystems. He has over 25 years experience at founder and management level focused on strategy, ideation, turnaround strategy, and stakeholder management. He also serves as an advisor and trustee on several boards, which is fantastic. And then our lady joining this panel is Shristi Supersat, which I hope I said that correctly, who is a payment specialist. Shristi is a payment specialist and young female engineer who's always striving to make an impact in the financial services industry. She is passionate about the ever-changing payments industry, new payment technologies, digitization, innovation, and strategies. So we're going to be hearing a lot more about how do we become tech savvy. So please let the emojis go in the chat, hand claps, smiles, thumbs ups, all of that, and let us welcome our panel today.